Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. Candlelight at Culloden. The icy winds that swept across the rugged moors of Culloden carried with them the bitter promise of war. Twilight shrouded the landscape in a deepening veil of blue and gray, only the flicker of a solitary candle marking the small cottage nestled in the heather above the battlefield. Within this humble sanctuary lived Aliana MacGregor, healer to the clan MacDonald. Her hands, stained with herbs and tinctures, bore witness to countless injuries, scars both seen and unseen. Yet this night, beneath the uncertain glow of the candlelight, she faced a wound beyond mending, a choice that would bind her heart and define her legacy. The rising sun had greeted the morning of the battle with a cold shimmer of frost upon the grass. The Jacobite clans, draped in tartans vivid as the blood they would soon spill, had assembled with fervent cries and prayers to the old gods and the Christian Lord. Aliana had watched from the edge of the encampment, her healing satchel by her side, prepared to do all she could for the stricken men she so dearly loved. The drums rolled like thunder, and in the distance the shouts of war echoed through the valleys. Culloden Moor became an inferno of clashing steel and shouted curses, flames licking the skins of men and horses alike in the chaos. The Jacobite charge, valiant and desperate, met the disciplined volleys of the redcoats with a ferocity born of centuries of longing. Blood soaked the ground, slicking the heather, turning the earth crimson. When the clash dwindled to a grim halt, so many lay broken or dead beneath the heavy sky. Aliana moved among the fallen with trembling hands, gathering the wounded and doing what she could to ease their suffering. Her sharp eyes found the shelter of her little cottage by nightfall, but that evening, fate delivered her a visitor both wretched and startling. A moan of pain near the edge of the woods drew her unwilling footsteps away from the safety of her hearth. There, half hidden among gorse and bracken, lay a soldier clad in the red coat of the English army, his face pale and browned with dirt, a cruel slash across his cheek bleeding slowly into the earth. The muskets lay scattered about him, reminders of the carnage and broken oaths. Aliana's heart pounded fiercely, an enemy soldier, deep in Jacobite lands, vulnerable and alive. A tremor ran through her as she knelt beside the man, whose eyes, clouded with pain, studied her with a mixture of fear and fragile hope. "Please," he whispered in halting Gaelic, a tongue he had learned in his youth among Highlanders, "help me." Her breath caught. To her clan, this man was the face of betrayal, the instrument of oppression. Yet to her, he was a fellow soul, a mortal torn by fate's cruel hand. The healer's oath was clear, yet the loyalties of blood and land were no less binding. As the candle sputtered in the chilling wind, Aliana was swallowed by the tempest within. Returning to the cottage with the soldier cradled in her weary arms, she laid him gently on a bed of thick wool and herbs. Her fingers worked swiftly but tenderly, cleansing the wounds with cold water drawn from the mountain spring, applying poultices brewed from the delicate blooms of arnica and heather flower. Each touch was a silent prayer, not only for his survival but for the mercy that might yet bloom within her own conflicted heart. As night deepened, the soldier's breathing eased, the pain in his eyes dulling to sleep. Aliana sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows upon the rough stone walls, shadows that seemed to embody the turmoil raging inside her. She knew the consequences if any of her kin discovered her kindness, suspected treachery, shunned even worse. Yet the thought of letting the soldier die beneath the naked skies stirred an ache she could not quell. Her mind drifted back to the stories her grandmother once told by the peat fire, of healers who served as bridges between clans, wielding neither sword nor spear but the sacred knowledge of the earth. They were the silent guardians of life amid the endless cycle of vengeance and bloodshed. Could she live up to that legacy? Suddenly, footsteps approached from beyond the door, hurried and salty voices cutting through the quiet. Eliana's heart surged. It was Lachlan, her younger brother, a fierce warrior whose hatred for the enemy ran as sharp as the dirk he wore at his belt. She hurried to cover the soldier's form with a blanket, holding her breath as the door creaked open. Lachlan's face lost its usual boisterous grin, replaced by a shadowed scowl. His eyes fell on the resting soldier and rage flared. "You would shelter a redcoat, sister? Do you seek to bring ruin upon us all?" he hissed. Eliana's voice was calm but resolute. "He is wounded, Lachlan. Nothing more. Our clan's honor lies not only in battle but in the mercy we show." Lachlan spat upon the floor. "Mercy? To the man who slaughtered our kin? You risk everything for this." Her gaze hardened, unwavering. "I risk nothing but my own pride and fear. That is a risk I am willing to bear. We must be better than the hatred that consumes us." He stepped closer. "If the chief knew this, you would be exiled or worse. And if the chief knew, perhaps he would see that in saving one man, we save our own souls." Lachlan's fury abated, though his eyes still held the wild blaze of war. After a tense silence, he nodded curtly. "I will say nothing, but be wary. The cost of compassion is high in these dark days." The days that followed tested Eliana's resolve. She kept the soldier hidden, tending his injuries, listening to his fractured stories whispered in the quiet moments. His name was Thomas Aldridge, a young clerk pressed into service far from home. Unlike the hardened soldiers of legend, Thomas was a reluctant participant in the brutal campaign, a man shaped by books and quiet contemplation rather than martial prowess. As Thomas regained strength, the cottage became a fragile sanctuary where no distinctions of nation or lineage mattered, only the shared frailty of human life. Eliana learned of his family, a wife and daughter awaiting his return in London, and Thomas, in turn, found solace in the healer's wisdom and the warmth of her gaze. One evening, the wind carrying the scent of autumn leaves and pine, Thomas confided his fears. "If I return to the camp, I risk certain death for desertion. Yet if I stay, I am a prisoner among those I was once told were my enemies." Eliana contemplated silently, feeling the enormity of his fate reflected in the shadows upon her walls. She had heard whispers that English patrols scoured the moor, hunting for survivors, their ire untamed by the truce of night. To surrender Thomas would be betrayal, to hide him was peril, to aid his flight, a danger beyond imagining. But she could not let him perish in cold ignorance or hatred. With dawn's first light, wrapped in a heavy woolen plaid, Eliana guided Thomas through narrow forest paths known only to the inhabitants of these hills. The heather and bracken brushed past them, their footsteps muffled by the soft earth. The moon faded behind rolling clouds as they approached the eastern edge of the moor, where a small group of traveling merchants promised safe passage beyond. Yet fate, ever capricious, held one last trial. Suddenly, a chorus of voices burst from the thickets, English soldiers, torches bobbing in the darkness, their muskets raised. There was no hiding now. Thomas froze, fear clear in his eyes. "You must flee, Eliana. Save yourself." But she would not abandon the man who had become a symbol not of enemy or ally, but of hope. "Hold fast, Thomas. I will not let them take you." Without hesitation, she stepped forward, hands raised in peace. "We mean no harm," she called, voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The captain of the troop, a captain named Sinclair, appeared beneath the trees, his gaze sharp and wary. "A woman guiding a rebel soldier? Speak quickly, or we take you both prisoner." Eliana met his gaze unflinchingly. "He is not a rebel but a wounded man, saved by the hands of a healer. I ask only for mercy." Sinclair studied her, then glanced at Thomas, who nodded weakly in confirmation. For a long moment, silence stretched tenuously between the parties. Finally, the captain lowered his weapon. "Your bravery is noted, woman. We will take the soldier with us. As for you, shall we consider your fate elsewhere?" Aliana felt the breath leave her, but did not flinch. Her loyalty had shifted, defined not by clan nor crown, but by the call of humanity. As the soldiers led Thomas away, the candlelight in the healer's cottage flickered, a silent witness to the courage born of compassion. That night, alone amid the heather, Aliana McGregor pledged to heal wounds not only of flesh but of spirit, believing that even in a fractured land, mercy could bind the broken pieces of a shattered world. For more stories, like and subscribe.